Alright, so we just watched In a Valley of Violence. Alright, In a Valley of Violence. I kept wanting to call it a History of Violence, and he kept wanting to call it
Danger in a Valley of Violence.
Danger in a Valley of Violence. I don't know why. Confusing title. Basically, it's a movie written and directed by Ty West, who also directed VHS, starring Ethan Hawke,
John Travolta,
and
Taissa Farmiga.
I guess the basic synopsis of the movie: a mysterious stranger basically rolls into town and
Gets into trouble.
So
Very spaghetti western.
Very spaghetti western. So I'm sure this should go without saying, but if you care about spoilers, stop watching right now, because we're gonna get into some pretty heavy spoilers coming up.
Yeah.
And as the movie opens, you definitely get this vibe like they're paying homage to the old spaghetti westerns of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And actually, the opening credits, I thought, my first thought was, is this a Tarantino movie?
Very Tarantino-ish, with like lots of solid colors on solid backgrounds.
Exactly. It opens up with the main character, Ethan Hawke, and doesn't really tell you much. Except he's got a cool dog.
Yeah, he's got a cool dog. Like that's the enticing part for like the first third of the movie, is that he has a cool dog.
I did like the movie.
As did I.
But there was just some things about it. I felt like it was trying to toe the line between an homage to spaghetti westerns and a parody of spaghetti westerns, and it felt like it kind of bounced back and forth a bit, which made it kind of hard to peg down.
Not in a smooth transition kind of way, more in like some scenes felt very comedic, but then the next scene would immediately try to be serious.
So it felt a little off-putting at times. And then the dialogue. The dialogue just seemed a little too modern for the era.
Yeah.
The cinematography was interesting.
Yeah, it was. None of it was bad.
None of it was bad, but none of it stood out either.
Yeah, none of it really like gripped you a lot. Like maybe something like, I mean, obviously at the time it came out, like a fistful of dollars, obviously.
Yeah.
The cinematography and just that entire movie was really kind of revolutionary, and seeing as how this movie is kind of paying homage to those things, it apes certain parts, but other parts just come off as a little too bland.
Yeah, I agree. And it definitely did fall in line with the cinematography of some of the old spaghetti westerns that, you may know and love.
A lot of wide shots of two characters staring each other down at opposite ends of a ghost town.
Which is really cool shots.
Yeah.
But nothing to really write home about. The writing is what I think the writing is what affected the tone of the movie, where we mentioned that it was kind of towing the line between homage and parody.
Yeah. You got the feeling sometimes that the characters did not take the situation they were in completely seriously.
I agree, and I think a part of that too is the writing. I mean, you have the three leads, and they're amazing actors.
Yeah.
So it's
really
definitely not on them. It's not because of a performance they did. They all did their jobs, and they did it very well.
Yeah.
I think in part it was just a big part of it was that writing. It just didn't seem concise at times.
Yeah. Also, only like 2 or 3 characters had kind of like that Old West kind of accent you expect from an Old Western.
That's what we were talking about, how the dialogue just didn't seem to fit that era. It wasn't quite modern, but it was significantly more modern than what you'd expect from a Western movie.
People spoke very civilized for a ghost town in the 1800s.
They did. They spoke very civilized. Again, I think John Travolta's character, who played the marshal in the town,
he
definitely felt like he fit.
Old West Marshal.
He definitely felt like he fit. Everything about him, like, you go back and you watch any old Clint Eastwood movie, he could easily play the marshal of the town in the Clint Eastwood
definitely.
movie. And then the character that they call Tubbs, or Tubby.
Yeah.
He definitely had the good accent, the nice draw to his tone. And I think my favorite character, honestly, was probably the dog.
The dog.
And unfortunately, we only get to see the dog for about the first 2/3 of the movie.
I would say the first third of the film.
First third of the film? Yeah, it's we don't get to see the dog a whole lot, but the dog definitely seemed to have some of the, like, the dog was one of the best characters.
Yeah.
Which is odd, because at times, and I don't mean to keep knocking on the writing, I just, it's what I kind of saw. Yeah. At times I feel like they were going for levity in a scene, but in the same scene they also want you to be under the impression that this character is taking the situation seriously.
Yeah, like they wanted to present it as kind of dark and mysterious, but also, hey, look at this.
Yeah.
It's kind of dumb.
And yeah, it just seemed odd. Throughout the movie, I wouldn't want to say I was just sitting around waiting for something to happen, but I kind of sat around waiting for something to happen.
There were three or I'd say at least 3 scenes where like a dramatic buildup kept happening.
Oh yeah.
And maybe I think once out of those 3 times it paid off.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And it pays off screen for the most part.
The second guy he goes after is another character who actually seemed kind of on the fence.
He wanted to take mercy on him because he didn't feel right about killing his dog and then killing him.
And then, but the problem with his character was he basically succumbed to peer pressure because, you know, the deputy sheriff and the other guys just wanted to get rid of this guy and fuck him up. He just kind of succumbed to it. But you're still waiting, you still want him to die, but you don't actually get to see his death, which was kind of cool. I like what they were going for, I just don't feel like it was executed right.
I actually think it was done pretty well.
Yeah.
Because what happens is you hear the gunshot, and he's about to kill him. Then it cuts to these 2 characters who are in a jail cell in the marshal's office, getting ready to take on Ethan Hawke, and you hear the gunshot go off. And one of the guys is standing near the window, scared out of his mind, and then he sees the body fall, and he just starts staring and freaking out about this guy's body just laying on the floor with half of his face blown off, because Ethan Hawke did shoot him in the head. And I just thought the way they cut away and then just show him laying face down motionless, and you get just a glimpse of his body falling off the roof. I thought it was pretty well done.
I think I just felt like there could have been a little bit more to the scene. I do like the way it kind of panned out. I just kind of wanted a little bit more in the scene. It's kind of like the Scarface scene when they're in the motel room and you never see anyone take the chainsaw to his face.
Right.
But you know it happened.
Right.
I felt like they were going for that, but it wasn't executed as well. It was still fun, it was still entertaining, and it was still rewarding in a sense. Yeah. You know, you got to see that character die. But what about when they kill the marshal? I feel like the marshal's death scene, in my opinion, total cop out the way it was done. It was just a bullshit scene. It was
very... Again, it was one of those times when it was like, okay, is this trying to be funny?
Yeah.
Because it was something that... So, Ethan Hawke and the deputy sheriff are standing on either ends of the ghost town. John Travolta's character's in the middle, trying to get them to calm down. They eventually say screw it and end up shooting at each other, shooting him in the process, and all of their bullets, with the exception of one bullet hitting Ethan Hawke, which you don't find out until one scene later.
Yeah.
All of their bullets nail John Travolta, and he's just taking these bullets, spinning around, getting shot over and over again until eventually they run out of bullets and he keels over.
And the thing that got me about that is that at the end of that scene, after he keels over, John Travolta's son, the deputy marshal, didn't seem to care that much that he was one of the people responsible for killing his own father. He just got mad about it.
Yeah.
So I felt like there was almost no motivation for him to be that mad. Like he shot
at his own dad.
Yeah, he shot indiscriminately. So it's just one of those things that I feel like the movie started off and they had really good direction and it felt like they kind of know what they wanted to do with it. And then about halfway through the movie, I feel like the writing and the directing got a little bit more loose with it.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of, I don't want to say it lost me completely, but that's where I started to stray. I'm sitting there thinking, oh, well, which way are they going now? What's, like, not that I don't know what's going to happen, but what direction are they going in?
Like, the Marshal was already a morally gray character.
Yeah.
Like, all the other characters are already hinting at that. But at the very least, he's probably, like... It almost feels like they're trying to make you feel sympathetic for him.
Yeah.
When he keels over and he's like gasping for breath. But you don't, because it's like, well, I didn't really get enough time to get attached to this character.
Yeah.
And he was already in this morally gray area where it's like, well...
It's easy to dismiss.
Yeah, it's easy to dismiss because it's implied that he's like kind of a fearmonger.
Yeah.
And kind of... very much peer pressuring the rest of what little people are left in the town to just keep quiet and go about their day and ignore the things that he does.
And that's, I think that was another problem with the film for me was not to say the character development was bad, but I felt like they stuck Ethan Hawke's character in the movie and they said, here, fill for this guy. And you kind of really can't. And as his character does develop, the only attachment or connection I had with him as a character was the fact that he had a really cool dog that got killed.
Yeah.
Everything else about his backstory, about him having a family, him being in the army, I didn't really care about. And not to say he was a non-likable character, he just wasn't necessarily... I think they try to paint him as an anti-hero, but he wasn't the kind of anti-hero that I necessarily cared to root for.
Right.
I mean, other than his dog dying. That was like the only motivation I had to want him to win.
Yeah, he... You know, it was very much like... If anyone got character development, it was mostly just him.
Yeah.
And they do that by giving you a little bit of his backstory. I think they give you... I believe they give you just enough to allow you to conjecture about what really made him desert the army, or what events leading up to that like really kind of triggered that in his brain to just leave. And they leave enough questions that he's still kind of mysterious, but yeah, he's not entirely likable. He's just he's actually almost kind of a goofy guy.
Yeah, a little bit, and
especially with his dog.
With his dog, and it's funny because for a big part of the movie, the only person he really exchanges dialogue with, or I shouldn't say exchanges dialogue, the only character he really speaks to for a big part of the movie is the dog. He doesn't really speak when anyone else in the movie speaks to him. He says very little or nothing at all, which was kind of cool. I actually liked that because it made him seem even more mysterious. So I like what they did with that. But because of that, I also felt that, well, I have no other connection to this man, or to this character. Taissa Farmiga.
Yeah.
I actually liked her character a lot.
Yeah.
She plays a young woman who later in the movie you find out is only 16 years old, but has a husband who left her.
Yeah. As was kind of the
norm.
That was kind of the norm at the time.
I guess, yeah. But I actually really liked her character. And I like the way she portrayed it too. She did a good job.
Yeah.
Because the first time you see her, you get the impression that she's a very young girl, and she's running, along with her sister, she's running a motel or a hotel in town.
She's doing like all the chores.
Yeah, and
she's taking care of her sick father.
So,
which is kind of a threat. They just kind of drop off.
Yeah, they mention her sick father for like a second, and then that's kind of it. You don't like the father himself. You don't actually see a person play him, really. You just see for one scene a man laying down in a bed in another room.
Yeah.
So it's not like
I feel like the father thread was almost picked up and dropped in the same scene.
Yeah, it was because they really don't mention the father being sick at any time before, and they really don't mention it after. I think they mention it once in one scene towards the end of the movie, and it's just mentioned in passing.
Yes.
So it almost felt like maybe there could have been a little bit more that could have been done with that. I don't know if maybe they cut it down for time. One thing I gotta say that I found odd was that it's not rated. And as a matter of fact, where we live in Southern California, we had to drive about 20 minutes to a theater. It was the only theater in our area that was actually showing it.
Up in Orange County.
And we live not that close to this part of Orange County.
Yeah.
So it was definitely interesting. Again, I don't know what the motivation was for not rating, for having the NR.
There's no reason this movie couldn't have been just rated R.
Yeah, it would have been rated R, no problem. I mean, there was no nudity whatsoever.
Yeah.
The violence that it showed was relatively minimal. The most gruesome thing was
the slashing of the throat.
And in all honesty, I think we see more violent, more grotesque things when we watch The Walking Dead.
Yeah. Definitely.
And then the language. It wasn't really that foul.
Yeah, no. There were like 3 or 4 F-bombs throughout the movie. And
at the most, and goddamn it was used quite a bit, and that's about it. So I found it odd. I don't know why they did it that way. I don't know if it's... The disadvantage to having the NR is that most movie theaters will not show the movie.
Yeah, because they'll assume that it's not rated because of some kind of racy content.
Exactly. And that means that the viewing audience, or the potential viewing audience, is narrowed down a lot.
Yes.
Which disappoints me a little bit, because all the gripes that I have about the movie, it was entertaining.
I still liked it.
And I actually, that being said, I would really like to see Ty West take a crack at another Western film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that about covers it.
Yeah. I think that's good.
I think that is good. Well, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.